Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists. Professor Bola Akinteruwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. And Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Well, good to see you all in the new year.
Thank you.
Let me say Happy New Year to you, because it's our first program,
Exactly,
our first Sunday of the year in 2020.
And the decade also. I mean.
Yes, and the beginning of a new decade. Now, here in Nigeria, let's start with this story, with the New Year message of President Muhammadu Buhari to Nigerians, highlighting key tasks his government will undertake in 2020 and the new decade. But first, he says he will be standing down in 2023 and will not be available in any future elections. Buhari's clarification comes amidst fears by some Nigerians that the president is seeking a backdoor option to continue in office beyond the constitutionally permitted two-term limit. The president says he's determined to help strengthen the electoral process, both in Nigeria and across the West African region. In the agricultural sector, the president says his government is achieving a revolution, which now leads to Nigerians enjoying food sufficiency. Again, there are no indications as to whether the nation's land borders will be reopened anytime soon. President Buhari says when government is satisfied that safeguards are adequate, normal cross-border movements will resume. He says his administration will not allow the sabotage of a well-planned economic regeneration strategy. Well, I mean, the president's New Year message has been controversial, with some people supporting it and saying that the president is reassuring Nigerians, giving hope, inspiring the people, using the opportunity of the message to outline the achievements and priorities of his administration in the past and in the present and the way forward. And he made quite some significant statements there, which some people have also controverted. One, his administration's success, as he claims, with the 2019 general election, his commitment to the rule of law and the deepening of electoral integrity. 3, his plan to leave a legacy. 4, his determination not to get involved in the politics of 2023. And then, of course, he ends the message with an outline of things that his administration intends to do within the first quarter of 2020 and beyond, including rail, housing, rehabilitation of airports, roads, gas pipeline projects, the second Niger bridge, and all of that. I'm sure you have read the message, and you also have your own viewpoint. Yemi, let me start with you. What do you think? You think it's an excellent speech? And please note that that message was published as an advertorial in almost every Nigerian newspaper, with the significant exception of the Punch newspaper.
For obvious reasons. And I'm sure Punch themselves were not surprised that they didn't get the
No, goal. I'm sure they were offered. Maybe they rejected it.
Well, I would probably wager that they were not offered. But
they were offered.
Oh, so
sure
are you stating that as fact? Or
yes, I'm giving that as information.
Interesting. Okay.
That's good.
Very, very interesting.
The negotiation didn't go too well.
That's fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's put it like that.
Fair enough. I think for me, 2 things. One, I so desperately wished our president spoke as well as he reads. Because the letter, for me, doesn't capture the way he communicates and the way he seems to understand the issue. So there's a disconnect between the Major General Buhari we hear when he speaks.
The President Buhari we hear.
The Major General Buhari, who is the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that we hear when he speaks to national issues, and the man who reads a prepared speech. So I think for me, that's always very disconcerting. And even when he reads it, you're just like, you didn't write this thing, and you probably don't believe half what you're saying. But anyway. But the second thing, I think, for me, more importantly, is I think the line that he hears that Prof alludes to in his column in This Day Today, asking Nigerians to be tolerant, law-abiding, and peace-loving. One, his government is anything but tolerant of dissent. And we've seen that in journalists and citizens that have been attacked for speaking up and disagreeing with the government of the day. So asking citizens to be tolerant seems a bit quite disingenuous, if I want to use that word. Law-abiding, again, his government is anything but law-abiding. Well, let me not say anything but, has also not obeyed his own laws. Thank you. So asking citizens to be law-abiding, also it's a bit like, really? So we should do what you don't do. And well, I guess maybe because they have the coercive powers of states, they can force us to be law-abiding or try to force us to be law-abiding and tolerant. And lastly, peace-loving. I think generally I would say Nigerians are peace-loving people, but there's a limit to what you can ask of a people who are constantly battered, don't feel safe. I mean, I watched a clip during the week of a cleric who basically charged people in Yoruba land that if they're attacked, they should attack back. And his point was basically making a case for self-defense. So if someone is defending themselves or has to do something because they were attacked, would you say that person is not peace-loving because they're trying to preserve their own life? So I think for me, those would be the two things, the disconnect between the president that reads and the president that speaks, and also his tolerant, law-abiding, and peace-loving charge to Nigerians.
Well, I mean, my personal opinion, I think there's nothing wrong in a president preaching tolerance in a country where we've seen a lot of sectarian, violence.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's anything.
Talk about being law-abiding in a country where we have a exponential spread of criminality.
Indeed, and impunity.
Yes, and a lot of impunity. So I think it's right on that score.
I'm not disputing that. I'm, however, saying that at a person of his stature, who's the highest-ranking political officer in this country, it's disingenuous to be asking Nigerians to do what you blatantly refuse to do. So yes, you can preach it, and nothing's wrong with that. But it would be, let me rephrase that, it would carry more weight and be better received coming from a man and a government who actually practices, there we go, what he preaches.
Anyway, it's interesting that you reference Professor Akintenuwa's article on page 11 of the This Day newspaper today. Prof, your article is titled, Beyond PMB's New Year 2020 Letter to Compatriots, Public Concerns and Double Standard. And I see that in the course of the article, you are also talking about the hypocrisy of the government. Now, would you like to shed some more light on this? How hypocritical is the government in the context of the president's New Year message?
Let's begin with a quotation from this speech. The president commended the commitment of the millions who voted in peace last February and those leaders who contested for office vigorously, but fairly submitting to the authority of the electorate, the INEC, and all other stakeholders. How do we interpret that? That's the beginning of the hypocrisy. Mr. President is not the president of a sectional, group in this country. He's the president of the whole Federation of Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now that he has been elected president, he can no longer have the luxury, all right, of now looking at people who voted for him, people who voted against him. He's now talking about people who voted peacefully and people eventually who did not vote for him. Why are you talking about people who contested for office vigorously, but you now put but fairly submitting, to the authority of That's a beginning of a double standard. Secondly, I have problem with the definition of a decade, Nigeria's decade. The word Nigeria in this case is the adjective qualifying the decade. That is, in the next 10 years, for instance, what will make the forthcoming 10 years Nigerian? That means that you must have a sort of a particularistic, decade defined in the manner of Nigeria. Now, what Mr. President has told us is simply defining his hopes. The next 10 years, you are going to be hoping. Why should you have 10 years to hope, 10 years to dream? Now,
no, that's not how you put it, Prof. I beg to differ. The president talked about future possibilities, immense possibilities. And I thought he was trying to inspire Nigerians by saying we should look towards the future with hope and optimism. That's what every leader all over the world does.
Hold on. Let me tell you, that is one way of interpreting the word. When you say a Nigerian decade, please, empirically, you must have parameters, determinants for that. What you are hoping for, what you are expecting, cannot be the determinants. The determinants of the next 10 years, one, hope. That's what he's saying. And I am saying that you cannot be sleeping for 10 years and just be hoping.
But it's also very specific. In the course of that message, yes. I mean, I've had to review this message on this program, not on this program, on another program.
I saw your discussion even with Taki Oshito.
He gave specifics.
Yes.
Right? So it's not as if it's just some rhetorical presentation.
No, you see, where we have problem in this country is that we love dreams. We love rhetorics. We make statements. Declarations. When you have good ghost writers, people will want to hear what you want to say, and they will clap for you. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have any meaningful content. My position is this. We can call it Nigeria's decade. There's nothing wrong with that. The issue is that you cannot be hoping, all right? You cannot be dreaming for a decade. That's the issue. If you not tell me that in the first 1 year, what you have done in the past, that you now want to consolidate, and you now want it to be a determinant, fine. But the issue is that already, please, Nigeria doesn't have grand strategy. We do not have any grand strategy. The way it is defined by Indians, like France.
Well, this administration has the Economic Recovery Growth Plan. I hope, Prof, you are aware of that, which is a strategy.
That is a mission. We have a
national industrialization
that is a mission.
policy.
Look, we don't have any vision of grand strategy. That is, what type of Nigeria
do we want?
In 10 years.
In 10 years. Now, how do we want, for instance, are you going to say that in the next 10 years, we will no longer have yellow fever?
Or poverty will be reduced.
Precisely. The word. They've been saying that one. But
no, Prof, I think to Dr. Abati's point, I think in fairness, there have been bits of it. Because part of his inauguration speech spoke about lifting, I don't know, say 1 million people or 10 million people out of poverty. So there are glimpses of it that they mention at different times.
He mentioned that one in this particular speech.
Yeah, exactly. He did. Come to think of it, yes, he did.
Anyway,
but what is important is that there's not a holistic picture.
We need to take a short break. When we return, the conversation will continue. Don't go away. It's still Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi AMOTEKUN, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Now, before we went on break, Prof, you were still making a point about the President's New Year message.
Yes.
If you could just summarize it quickly.
Yes, the major concern that the Nigerian people who have had Mr. President to address is the concern of, Islamization, Fulanization. And more importantly, when you are looking forward to 10 years to come, there is no indication of any foreign policy agenda that you will want to carry the people along with you, especially in light of the problems we are having in the region, the new echo currency, the close of the borders. I think the speech is okay, only to the extent that it does not address what the Nigerian people will want.
Okay, well, Yemi, you wanted to say something, or I should go to Professor Ariole? Prof.
Yeah, but my own interest in all this is basically what is measurable. Because everything he said, we have been seeing, we have been hearing about them all along, and we haven't seen any measure or the measurement process that will say, yes, this has been. But I'm interested in the housing estate, which he mentioned, about 40 of them or whatever. I expect in 3 years' time that those estates will be ready for Nigerians to occupy. And thank God
in 10 years.
No, in 3 years. He's going in 3 years' time. He's not going to be here with beyond 4 years.
He's not talking about 10 years. He's talking about the delivery of those housing estates within the first quarter of 2020.
That's what I'm saying. So is it not within the same tenure, his tenure?
You said 10 years. That's
No, I didn't say 10 years. Within the 3 years, he's going to stay.
Right.
We must see it, and it's measurable. And we'll see what will happen.
But Victor,
that's exactly the only.
With due respect,
yeah.
I mentioned that issue of housing
I
estates.
know that's
already.
gone during Baba Kekere's time. We saw it, and it was
It's
a
not
failure.
proper for the government of Nigeria to take deposits from the Nigerian public in 1994.
Yes, I
We are
have
in
my own money
2020.
there also.
And
They have taken
you
it
are
from
talking
me, and
about this.
I can't recover
The
it.
government of Nigeria is the most fraudulent.
Anyway,
Most corrupt.
I think what is important is that, President Muhammadu Buhari is talking about the future. He's talking about service delivery. He's talking about leaving a strong legacy, particularly with the electoral process in Nigeria.
He should talk about the money taken from the Nigerian people.
Which seems to be a good indication that when the electoral bill amendment, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, when it gets to his table, that he will sign it expeditiously.
Let the government talk about the money taken from the Nigerian people in 1994.
Okay.
On
Is
housing.
this electronic electoral process we'll be looking for
I'm
now?
sure that now that we have brought it up, let's hope that someone will note it. Babatunde Fashola SAN is the minister in charge. So they will look into it.
But I just wanted
Looks
to...
like Prof has money there.
Yeah, he does.
And
I
you
have
also
money.
have
Yes,
money.
yes.
We
They
took
seized
with
my
your
money.
back
You
loan.
want to get your money back.
Since 1994, my money has been there.
This same Fashola was governor
you
of
are a
Lagos
neutral
State.
person in this matter.
No, yes,
Quickly,
I don't-
before we move on.
No, I just want to say that
You don't have money in this house.
No, I don't. That you highlighted the positives, but I think it's also important to talk about in the context of what I would say are the negatives. In preaching a message that you're not practicing and expecting Nigerians to follow suit. And secondly, the point Prof made about elections. I think it says a lot that the Major General Buhari is a bit dismissive about the challenges that we've had around our elections, saying that more or less that they worked well and it was fine. That people went to
Well,
court.
he talked about people,
said they went to court, but that
not
doesn't-
resorting to self-help,
Yeah,
which
but-
I think is a good message. But let's move to Iran. A top Iranian commander has been killed in a U.S. strike on Baghdad's international airport. Tehran has vowed revenge, dramatically raising the stakes in bitter tensions between Tehran and Washington. The Pentagon says the United States President Donald Trump ordered Qasem Soleimani's killing after pro-Iran protesters laid siege to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, strictly vowed to take severe revenge for Soleimani's death. This is the biggest escalation yet in a feared proxy war between Iran and the U.S. on Iraqi soil. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister is calling the killing of Iran's top general an act of state terror. His body was flown to the city of Avaz in southwest Iran. Thousands of mourners dressed in black marched through Avaz, while many Iranians have rallied in recent days to show grief over the death of Soleimani, regarded as the country's second most powerful figure after Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei Others say the worry is death might push the country to war with the United States. In fact, people are talking about the possibility of World War III. And already Iran is flying a red flag, which is most unusual, which is like a declaration of war. And President Donald Trump, also in a battle-ready mood, has said that, look, if Iran should threaten the United States again, the United States would not hesitate to match firepower for firepower. Although he acted unilaterally without recourse to Parliament, to Congress, as it is called in the United States. He has since, sent a letter within 48 hours, as the law requires, under the War Powers Act, to seek the concurrence of Congress. The Congress is divided along partisan lines, and there are many Americans who also think that President Trump's, direction or directive to strike, and to kill Qasem Soleimani and Ahmad Hamdani, is an act of provocation. But our fear, generally, is that there will be an escalation of conflict in the Middle East. Well, let me start with you, Professor.
Yeah, exactly. There will be escalation. And the unfortunate thing is that United Nations Permanent Security Council members are about divided. Because here you see France and Germany and China trying to see it as something that is not allowed. And then you see Britain resuming his escort convoy in that Gibraltar,
the Strait of Gibraltar.
The Strait of Gibraltar, as if they are happy about it, instead of trying to douse the tension, which means for now, Britain is on the side of Trump. States. And Putin, that would have even been the best. What he's saying, and I read on the internet, is that it is left for God to forgive a terrorist, but to give the terrorist for God to forgive is his own duty, which I don't even know where he stands, which means...
He's supporting the killing.
I'm so disturbed, you see, because he said forgiving the terrorists is God's business. But for me to get the terrorists handed to God is exactly within my own...
Also supporting the United States, so Saudi Arabia and Israel.
Yeah, I'm completely confused about this whole situation. And of course, we know that Iraq is still a zone of war. Because America, of course, will not be completely happy with the militias, operating in Iraq. And the president of Iraq certainly is the person to be blamed in total, because he feels very, very unsafe. And militias are there, and Americans are there. So it's whatever we call it, Iraq is still a war zone. I'm only worried, why should this Iranian general find himself in Iraq?
No, he's accused of having ordered the attack on the U.S. airbase.
And they say he's even planning a coup d'etat against the president.
And the killing of an American. And he's also, Iran is also backing the Syrian military forces in Iraq.
Okay.
The Qaeda,
the militias, that's what they say, yes.
But Prof, let me have you.
A very, very unfortunate situation,
I think you've said the obvious. And Victor also said it. There will be escalation. The decision of Donald Trump, most unfortunate, is very, very myopic in design. And it's going to be very devastating in outcome. Myopic because he believes that an attack on the Iranian Soleimani is necessarily restricted to his killing. No. Since Soleimani is an epitome, is an agent, is a representative, is a man of the people. An attack on him is necessarily an attack of the whole people of Iran. And that's why you will see that you have many people coming into the open, all right, to grieve and to show solidarity. Many now
some Nigerians who protested over the weekend. I mean, what's our stake in the matter? Why would Nigerians go to the streets?
No, you don't know about Nigeria.
Someone was killed in Iran.
El Saraki is still here. Of course, he's an Iranian, you quote. So,
Iran supports
why you quote? I say you
No,
quote.
he's not,
No.
but, I mean, the fact that he has support, he's a Nigerian, let's just be clear about that.
The issue is that Donald Trump has not considered the implication of killing Soleimani for the American citizens for a long period to come. Now, the Americans have been indirectly dragged into a war in the making. All right. In such a way that the Iranians, the militias, will be operating as guerrillas. Now, we aren't going to have a specific battlefield where the strength, the power of the United States can be easily demonstrated. No, we aren't going to have that one.
Well, the Americans have designated 52 sites in Iraq that they will strike in a matter of seconds. Should there be any retaliation from Iraq?
Let me tell you, guerrilla warfare has nothing to do with the sites. You can have 100 Iranians today deciding to go on suicide missions. Okay. The policy, the killing of Soleimani has only created, room for unnecessary attacks on the good people of America, the world over. All right. So you can go to the 52 sites in Iran.
Or Christians all over the world.
Precisely.
After all, after the killing of al-Baghdadi, it was 11 Christians in Nigeria
That were executed in the Boko Haram sector.
So you see, the escalation we know about. But the form, the manner it will take is what remains a major problem.
Good point, Prof. On that note, we'll go on another short break. It's time now for a short break here on Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. Don't go away. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Now let's take another topic, interesting one from Nigeria. This is from Kwara State. A building belonging to the family of former Nigerian Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, was demolished after security operatives dispersed protesters, including old women within the complex vicinity. The Kwara State government has been accused of carrying out the demolition exercise at midnight to avoid clashes with loyalists of the former Senate President who had been keeping vigil in the area. The state governor, Abdurrahman Abdurazak, in December, announced his decision to revoke the ownership of the property, which was put up by the late Dr. Bukola Saraki, the father of the former Senate President. He said the land was originally designated for the construction of a secretariat and parking lot of the civil service clinic, but that it was unlawfully allocated to a private firm without any record of payment to the state government. The former Senate President Bukola Saraki insists his late father lawfully acquired the land from the state government. Well, Yemi, I'm sure you've been following this story. What do you think? Do you think this is a case of political vendetta, abuse of power on the part of the state government or the state governor, an extension of the Otoge phenomenon, or perhaps this is a clear case of insisting that no human being is above the law, either in the allocation of land, the procurement of land, and that due process is indeed what the state government in Kwara is defending and protecting.
I think I'll go with your first options, abuse of power. And I think you used another phrase, because in my mind I was
Political vendetta.
Exactly, thank you. So I'll say all of the above for those two. Because even if he believes that it wasn't properly acquired, then you give the owner the opportunity to present their case and say, we did lawfully acquire it and this is the evidence how. From what I understand, the process wasn't followed, because that's what Ms. Saraki is saying, that she had kept quiet, assuming that due process would be followed. So give them an opportunity to show that the land was properly acquired. But what I find fascinating is two things. Bukola Saraki, former member of PDP, now a member of the APC, a minister in the Buhari administration.
Minister of Transportation State.
Minister of State, but a minister nonetheless, in the Buhari administration. And in her statement, she said she had kept quiet because she just assumed that things will follow a process. And I think probably at the back of her mind, given the fact that she's APC, the fact that she has supported the governor, didn't expect that kind of decision to be done without a process, so to speak. And she was quite surprised about that. I think second, the flip side, the former Senate President's younger sister, Konsola, in her statement, which I found very interesting, referenced that if not that our brother had messed up a bit, that the governor wouldn't have had the chance to become the governor of the state, so to speak. So I thought those two sort of...
that was if Bukola Saraki was still a member of the APC, or he had retained his position in the Senate, the governor would not
be doing such a thing.
Be bold enough to go after his family.
I thought it was interesting that one sister chose to sort of say that our brother is part of why this is happening because he messed up a bit. But Gbemi saying that I think I expected this to follow due process. So for me, I would align with Gbemi on this matter because I don't think, at least in the way the government has presented it, didn't give the Saraki family an opportunity to present their case that we lawfully acquired this land.
The matter was even before the court.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of that.
Saraki Legacy Trust. The trustees went to court
on a Friday
in a case titled Asha Investment versus Governor of Kwara State and others. Okay. And the state government, in fact, did not even bother about that court case. The state government claims it's not aware of any order of court or of any suit, that is pending. Clearly, it looks like an attempt to, move faster than the judicial process.
And I think, sorry, before you go, Prof, let me just say this. And I think in the context of what we said with Major General Buhari earlier about sort of rule of law and law abiding, it sets a really negative tone. Because if the state was not in a hurry to do, the building is there. It's been there for, 40 years or whatever it is. So going to court or establishing your case that then gives you the power in clear view of everyone, to then demolish the building and reclaim the land, then there will be none of these issues. So why the urgency the day after New Year? As in, what race are we racing that this building must come down now?
Why should it be only that building that is being targeted? In the whole of Kwara State.
Such urgency.
Was there a review
of
land allocation?
Exactly. So these are the things that make your initial point vendetta, plus abuse of power, because unfortunately the governor does have the power. And back to your point about the coercive powers of the state, he can order bulldozers to just ransack buildings. Now, if they now find out later that, the governor was wrong, the building is down already.
Well, we saw it happening in Oyo State under Ajimobi.
For IFLS
Ajimobi demolished IFLS property.
Yeah.
And then later on, I think the state government, the people of Oyo State,
had to pay.
Ended up helping him to rebuild the place. Prof, yes.
If you talk about political vendetta, I think you are unnecessarily being simplistic. It's more than that. It is an act of wickedness. You see, is it December 27 or November 27? Okay, December 27. The governor announced revocation of the title to the land. It's they call it plot 1, plot 3, plot 5.
Yes.
And December 27, that is 3-4 days to the end of the year. On the basis of that announcement, the Sarakis immediately went to court.
To stop them?
To stop, all right, to say, look, if you are rebooking this, let us go to court for adjudication of the matter. In anticipation that the court may have a ruling, stay of action, the governor decided to go and pull down the house. When the team that was sent there went for the first time, the thing was resisted. You have women, you have many people preventing them. They repeated the attempt. That second time, they were still unable to do that. By 12 midnight, when the people now were preparing for crossover, New Year, and they went away. Now, another team, led by the SA or assistant to the governor, came with police first. In fact, some law enforcement agents the second time refused. Now, yes, they withdrew, they went back. But the governor consciously still came back the third time when everybody appeared to have left.
At 3:30 a.m.
Wow.
In fact, they said, some reports said 3:32, 3:35 here.
I said 3:30 a.m.
Yes,
So you see, so this time, the governor had decided that, look,
By force.
he will use, yes, this one is what the French will call the manu military approach.
Exactly.
I said something. now came to pull down consciously. So the issue of saying you do not know whether or not there is a court order or anybody going to court, it's missing the question. So he consciously, and now there's nothing wrong if he wants to claim the land, the building back, because the governor claims that it was being used for political meetings, all right, when the owner, the Ile Saraki, was there. But as you rightly pointed out, the land was earmarked for secretariat, and then
No, but the immediate past governor of Kwara State even built a new secretariat. He planned to move the secretariat to another location.
Yeah, that's the
So
point.
which secretariat is
That's where I'm
this
coming
new government building now?
That's where I'm coming
This
to
where we
say
hear
that
Would they have three different secretariats?
Yemi was
In
talking
Ilorin
about
alone?
abuse of power. Yes, it's more of that. It's political recklessness. And I'm saying that it is most unfortunate that under President Muhammadu Buhari, all right, this political recklessness has become a hallmark.
No, but you can't hold the president responsible for the
Yes, you are.
recklessness in the
But-
states.
Because if
But
the
you
federal
see,
government
it's a
is
federal-
reckless, the subnational
Yeah,
should be
precisely.
reckless as well.
No, it's a federal system.
So everybody should just be reckless.
No, just hold the man who is guilty
No.
of whatever misconduct
No.
guilty.
You should
Don't say something happened in Kwara, then it's Buhari you will
But
blame.
what you are
If-
saying is the tone, Dr. Abati. Let's not
tone.
mistake that thing. Look, even principles of life, the head dictates the tone. So if you're federal, at the federal level, your president and his cohorts
It's for
are
a particular
reckless,
direction.
Yes,
Anyway,
then
before
subnational-
we leave this subject, let me
Picking
hear
up journalists,
Professor
federal and
Abiola
state
say-
are all the same.
No, you
Yes.
blame the man that is responsible.
Indeed, but I'm saying that you also can drop hireless between the tone at the federal and the tone at
No,
subnational.
the president is
Even
not a
if-
headmaster.
It's
He's not a headmaster.
It's just the president of the country.
He cannot be
Is it not?
responsible for misconduct
Is it not the president
in the
of the
states.
country?
The governors that misbehave.
What
you hold
happened to
them responsible.
Ajimobi with Ayifele? What happened to him?
It's basically the state government issue, and I think it's a vendetta issue here, as Yemi said once. And like French people will say, noblesse oblige. Does it mean no respect for any human being, on this Nigerian soil? As far as I'm concerned, Saraki has been a governor of Kwara State. He has been president of the Senate. He has been, some level of respect should be accorded to his person before going to, destroy his legacy. So, as far as I'm concerned, the state government did not do it well at all. And he must be reprimanded. From the federal level, I would say, that's where we are talking about the head.
It's constant disrespect for rule of law.
Exactly, and it's at all levels.
It's as simple as
federal,
that.
state, and local government.
Yes.
So even if individuals are personally responsible, but it's a general tone of an administration that allows impunity and disregard of rule of law, and we can't separate those issues.
So, Yemi, what do you suggest as a way forward? Both for the governor and the Saraki family. We have just 30 seconds on this.
Well, I don't know. The building is down. The building is down. So they will go to court and figure out who
Yes,
owns the
precisely.
land. I mean,
So the Saraki family should go to
you
court.
continue. I mean, they're already in court.
Okay.
So
Fair enough. On that note, we'll take another short commercial break. We'll be right back. It's still Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show. Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Polytech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi AMOTEKUN, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Now, let's move on. Still in Nigeria. The governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, says the joint security outfit, AMOTEKUN, initiated by the 6 governors in the zone, will commence work on January 9. Message, Dr. Fayemi said the outfit will complement the efforts of the regular security agencies. The governor urged community leaders and groups not to allow themselves to be used to cause unnecessary tension that could trigger a crisis in the state. He said the 2020 budget bears clear testimony to his delivery quest at providing good road network and an enabling environment for business concerns. But the major issue is this proposed security outfit in the southwest, AMOTEKUN, or leopard. AMOTEKUN in Yoruba language means leopard. That name has been chosen both for its symbolism and for the qualities, to convey the qualities, of the expected new security outfit. Now, the Yoruba Southwest governors have been on this since June. They met with President Buhari, who endorsed the idea. In July, they met with the National Security Advisor, who also endorsed it. In August, they set up a task force to work out the details. And now Governor Fayemi has announced that the security outfit will be on the roads by January 9. And this is against the background of the insecurity across the country, and particularly in the southwest. You will recall that at a point, the daughter of the leader of Afenifere, Paruben Fashionati, Mrs. Olakun, was murdered by herdsmen. At another time, 5 pastors of the Redeemed Christian Church in Yoruba territory were also abducted and later released. And there have been many cases, reported cases of similar acts of impunity, brutality, kidnap, armed robbery across the southwest. Hence, these governors came together and said, we have a right. So is this to protect our people? So is this an indication of regional police? Or what we're seeing here is also a dimension of the politics of protection? Because that's very political in Nigeria. Either you are talking about the Hizbah, or you are talking about the Bakassi boys, or you are talking about the Igbesu boys in the Niger Delta. What does this mean in terms of the implications for security of lives and property? Yemi?
I think I'll start with your last point, the politicization of security. And I think, it's been a constant conversation around state policing, the inefficiency of a federal structure dictating how security is done at local levels. But what concerns me about this is the overlapping forces. So in Lagos, you would have AMOTEKUN, you'd have the police, you'd have the army in some areas, you'd have Lagos Rapid Response, you'd have neighborhood watch. So my concern is, how do these different elements then work together, and how do citizens know who has what rights for what? Like, who does what? And that's, for me, really quite important, because ultimately, if there are no clear demarcations of rules and responsibilities, and you have multiple security agencies that can then have rogue officials, then citizens are more at risk, I would say, because you then have more people you're dealing with. Lagos, for example, we're still dealing with SARS, rogue policemen, shaking down young techies, for example, with the campaign Stop Robbing Us, taking them to ATM. So if you're having to deal with police that does that, and then now maybe AMOTEKUN, for me, that's just a concern. Like, how do all this fit together? But it does say a lot that each region is finding ways to protect its own citizens, because there is a failure of a national architecture to provide security for all citizens.
Professor Ariole, what do you think?
I'm really worried, because that shows that the federal government that has the exclusive right to protect Nigerians in terms of internal security and outside security seem not to be doing its work very well. Already we see within Lagos we are in, whether we like it or not, we have over 5 paramilitary organizations talking about security. If I should even mention Unilag alone, where I come from, there are up to 3 or 4 different security outfits within Unilag trying to keep security in Unilag, and we still can't find the result expected of all about security. And so I wonder what's going to happen. There will be conflict. And it depends on which political party that is in power. Before you know it, they're either using the federal might against the AMOTEKUN or the one. Seriously, we are going to witness such a thing. Some, those who want to defend their own interests will say, look, this is our own local defense system. We should not allow them to be annihilated. Those who are also interested in the federal might will bring also the federal might to prove that, look, we are Nigerians and all of us must. See, these are issues that show that really Nigerian state is about failing. And as we are talking now, even Katsina, we say the bad boys have taken position again in Katsina upon all the security outfits in Katsina, including being the president's own state. With all the negotiation the governor had with the bad boys, they are coming back to Katsina. We have seen it also in Kogi. And all these are issues that, I don't know, it really shows that there is a need for federal government to really, guard its loins and think about how to secure Nigeria internally.
Well, incidentally, the Nigerian government has come up with a national security strategy document, which was submitted recently to the president for his approval. You are quite right. In spite of that, regions, states, other stakeholders feel the need to protect themselves. And it speaks perhaps
something is wrong.
The failure of the existing architecture. But before I come to you, Prof, let's take the last topic for today. The Nigerian government has confirmed the disengagement of 25 ambassadors and heads of missions. The spokesperson of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Ferdinand Nwonye, confirmed that the affected persons had earlier been informed of the plan to disengage them at the end of 2019, but they had insisted that the sack was certain. The envoys had pleaded for 2 to 3 months extension in order to complete some diplomatic formalities before their disengagement. They were reminded of the 10-year extension given to them by President Buhari in 2018. The ambassadors were directed to hand over to the most senior officers in their respective embassies and missions. Now, Professor Akintoye, I'll come to you because this is your territory. Now, is it a normal thing for ambassadors to insist on not leaving after the president has said, look, thank you for your services, I would like to disengage you and make other appointments? Because it looks like if they got an extension in 2018, in 2019, they still didn't want to go. What really is the problem? Are these career ambassadors or non-career ambassadors?
There are many ways of looking at the issues. We've not been told much about what informed, the recall. I use the word recall contrary to what is published. They say 25 ambassadors were sacked. There's nothing like sacking at all, because those ambassadors normally were accredited on the basis of an agreement that had initially been given. Without that one, they wouldn't have been. You see, the issue is that...
But they hold their position at the pleasure of the president.
Exactly.
Because the president, there is ambassadors, and he has the power to recall them.
That is one way of looking at it. You see, Nigeria will always have problems. Why? Because as Nigerian, we think European. All right? We apply conventional agreements in the Nigerian way, not in the protocolar manner that is civilized taken. You see, these ambassadors, they have children in school. All right? Then, when you recall an ambassador, what happens to the children in school? Now, what happens? They normally rent houses for them. Now, your social bills, apart from the argument that they will want to perform some...
Fortunately, Prof, we seem to have run out of time.
Okay, look.
It's the word of the ambassadors against the Nigerian government. Because we're told they had been notified since 2018. They had more than 1 year to get ready for their exit.
First of all, why did Mr. President even extend their stay?
Exactly.
Without getting the concurrent consent of the legislation.
On that note, we'll have
So-
to call it a day. We'll continue the conversation next Sunday. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati from my entire team here in Lagos. It's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.